We wed as strangers, but destiny made her his forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main characters. The golden hallway glimmered under the flash of 100 cameras. Reporters shouted questions, lights flickered like lightning, and in the middle of it all, Ethan Vale, the reclusive millionaire behind Vale Audio, carried a young woman in his arms. Her satin dress shimmered, her face pale but composed. For the crowd, it was a perfect scandal. For them, it was the first day of their contract. As the elevator doors closed, shutting out the noise, Ethan looked down at her and whispered, "From now on, you are my wife, just not forever." Her name was Mia Carter, a 25-year-old designer from the Bronx who had never stepped foot in a luxury hotel until today. Just 12 hours earlier, she had been sewing under a flickering lamp in a basement studio that smelled of coffee and old fabric. Bills scattered across the table, one stamped "Final Notice." Her sister, Lena, paralyzed from the waist down, had been denied another month of therapy. The clinic needed $8,000, and Mia had $37 left in her bank account. That was when her phone rang. The voice on the other end was smooth, confident, unmistakably rich. "Miss Carter, my name is Ethan Vale. I need a wife just for 6 months." She thought it was a prank. "Excuse me, what?" "A contract marriage," he said calmly. "You will be compensated generously, enough to cover your sister's care for a year." Her breath caught. It sounded absurd. But when she searched his name online and saw the empire Vale Audio Systems, worth billions, she realized it was very real. The tabloids said he was heartless, the kind of man who built soundproof walls to keep the world out. Tonight, she would find out how true that was. Inside his penthouse, the air smelled faintly of oak and rain. Ethan handed her a sleek folder, the agreement. No real intimacy. 6 months of public appearances. Full confidentiality. Payment upon completion. He offered her a pen made of gold and black glass. "Sign it," he said, his tone calm, businesslike. "Or walk away. But I promise, this will change both our lives." Mia stared at the papers. Her hands trembled, remembering Lena's voice that morning. "Do not give up on me, Mia. You are all I have left." And so, she signed. Hours later, under chandeliers and champagne light, they stood before cameras as husband and wife. The applause felt heavy, rehearsed, unreal. But when Ethan's hand touched hers for the first time, something unexpected flickered an electric pulse neither could explain. He leaned close for the photo, his whisper low enough for only her to hear. "Smile, Mrs. Vale. The world is watching." She smiled, but in her chest, fear and curiosity collided. She had no idea that behind those cameras, destiny was already rewriting the script they both thought they controlled. Mia Carter had never seen luxury up close. The elevator doors opened to a world that smelled of cedar, leather, and quiet money. Every inch of Ethan Vale's penthouse gleamed with polished steel and glass. New York City glittered far below, a skyline she had only dreamed of while sketching dresses from her tiny studio window. Now she stood in the center of that dream, wearing a borrowed gown and a ring that was not truly hers. Ethan walked past her, his tone clipped and businesslike. "You will have your own room down the hall. Appearances matter, but boundaries stay intact." She nodded, unsure what to say. The marble floor reflected her face, pale and uncertain. He glanced back at her, reading her discomfort. "Relax, Miss Carter. No one expects us to fall in love. It is just 6 months. Right?" she murmured, though inside her chest something twisted. That night, she could not sleep. The rain tapped against the window like restless fingers. From across the apartment came the faint hum of a piano Ethan was playing. The melody was low and haunting, the kind of song that spoke of loneliness money could not fix. She sat at the edge of her bed, listening until the sound faded. The next morning, the housekeeper, a kind woman named June, helped her prepare for their first public event as husband and wife. June whispered, "Mr. Vale has not played that piano in years. Maybe you are good luck." Mia smiled weakly. "Or maybe he just needs practice." By noon, they were in a limousine on the way to the Vale Audio Gala, an annual showcase where Ethan announced his latest innovations. Outside the venue, reporters swarmed like bees. The flash of cameras burned against her eyes. Ethan reached for her hand, not out of affection but instinct. Still, his touch steadied her. When they stepped out, a reporter shouted, "Mr. Vale, how does it feel to be a married man?" Ethan's jaw tightened. Before he could answer, Mia leaned closer and whispered through her smile, "Let me handle this." She turned to the cameras. "It feels like the start of a new sound," she said warmly. "A melody we are still learning." The crowd laughed. Ethan looked at her, surprised. For the first time, his expression softened. Inside the ballroom, chandeliers shimmered like frozen waterfalls. The air buzzed with conversation, champagne, and curiosity. Mia moved through it all like an imposter in borrowed heels. When a famous designer spilled her drink and tore the hem of her gown, panic rippled through the room. Without thinking, Mia dropped to her knees, grabbed a sewing kit from a nearby server, and repaired the tear in seconds. The woman gasped, "You are a lifesaver." Ethan watched the scene unfold, the faintest smile touching his lips. He had hired Mia because she was unknown, unconnected, safe. Yet, in front of a crowd of elites, she was the only one who felt real. Later that night, back in the car, he broke the silence. "You handled the press, and the dress. Impressive. Old habits," she said, staring at the city lights. "When you are poor, you learn to fix things fast." He turned to her, something unreadable in his gaze. "Perhaps that is what I need, a person who fixes things." The days that followed settled into a strange rhythm. Morning coffee across the marble kitchen island. Public events that felt like theater. Quiet evenings where she sketched while he adjusted sound frequencies on his prototype speakers. They rarely spoke, but when they did, the air between them felt charged like two instruments tuning to the same note. One night, Ethan found her asleep on the couch, a sketchbook open on her lap. Inside was a design for a dress made from layers of sheer fabric shaped like sound waves. He touched the edge of the page, careful not to wake her. For the first time, he saw not a contract but a woman chasing beauty in a world that often ignored it. The next morning, he placed something on her work table, a slender silver pen engraved with the words, "Make beauty out of chaos." Mia stared at it, speechless. "Consider it a gift," Ethan said quietly. "I admire people who create from nothing." Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, the world outside the glass windows vanished, but the illusion of peace would not last. At the next charity dinner, Mia overheard whispers, guests gossiping that Ethan had married her to cover a scandal, that she was a gold digger, a convenient distraction. The words cut deep, but she smiled through them, determined not to give them power. During his speech, Ethan mentioned her unexpectedly. "My wife reminded me that perfection is not silence. It is the courage to let your flaws be heard." Applause filled the room. Cameras flashed. Mia blinked back tears. In that moment, she felt something shift, not just in the crowd, but inside her. Later that night, she stood on the balcony, watching the city lights pulse like distant stars. Ethan joined her, silent for a while before saying, "You did well tonight." "So did you," she replied softly. Their reflections met in the glass. Two strangers bound by a paper promised slowly, unknowingly, learning the language of something that neither of them dared to call love. Weeks passed, and the contract marriage between Ethan Vale and Mia Carter began to look strangely real. The tabloids that once mocked them now printed headlines like, "The Billionaire and the Girl Who Sewed Hearts Back Together." Publicly, they looked flawless. Privately, both carried secrets that neither dared to voice. Every morning, Ethan left for the Vale Audio Factory in upstate New York, where the air smelled of metal and cedar. His employees feared him precise, cold, unshakable, yet something had changed. He began asking how the junior engineers were doing, pausing to listen instead of walking away. When his assistant Claire teased him about the new Mrs. Vale effect, he only said, "Maybe silence is not always strength." At home, Mia turned the guest room into a small design studio. Fabric scraps covered the floor like fallen petals. She spent hours drawing, stitching, and reworking patterns while the city thundered outside. It was not part of the contract, but Ethan allowed it. Sometimes he would stand at the door, watching her hum softly as she worked, that same quiet melody she always returned to. One evening he asked, "What inspires you?" Mia smiled faintly. "Shapes that do not fit. Colors that should not work together. People like that too." He nodded, understanding more than he wanted to admit. That night, he invited her to the sound lab. Massive speakers lined the walls, the air pulsing with a low hum. "This is what I build," he said. "Machines that turn chaos into music." He handed her a pair of headphones. "Tell me what you hear." She closed her eyes. The music began as a rough storm, distorted bass and static, but slowly transformed into something soft, almost human. When she opened her eyes, her voice was quiet. "It sounds like pain learning how to breathe." For a moment, Ethan forgot the deal, the cameras, the lies. "Exactly," he whispered. But in the same week, shadows crept back in. A journalist released photos of Mia entering a hospital alone, claiming she was hiding a secret child. The story was false, but it spread like wildfire. Ethan's investors began to question his judgment. At the next board meeting, one of the directors, a sharp, elegant woman named Vanessa Reed, cornered him. She was his former fiancée and now his biggest critic. "Your fake wife is ruining you, Ethan," she said coldly. "End it before it ends you." That night, Ethan confronted Mia. His tone was clipped, his eyes unreadable. "Why were you at the hospital?" She froze. "My sister's treatment. You knew about her." "I know what the press is saying," he snapped. "You could have told me before this exploded." Mia's voice broke. "I did not think I owed you every detail of my pain." Silence fell. The distance between them felt heavier than any wall. Later, she sat alone on the balcony, the wind cold against her skin. Inside, Ethan poured a drink he did not touch. He looked at the silver pen on his desk, the one engraved, "Make beauty out of chaos," and realized he had failed his own words. The following morning, reporters camped outside their building. Mia slipped out quietly with her sketchbook and suitcase. She left a short note on the piano. "Thank you for the 6 months. You helped me believe that kindness still exists." When Ethan found it, his heart dropped. For the first time in years, he missed a meeting, ignored his phone, and drove through the rain until he reached the hospital she had visited. The nurse recognized her photo. She paid the last bill and said she was moving her sister to a care home upstate. He sat in the parking lot, rain drumming against the windshield, memories looping like broken audio. Her laughter at the gala, her trembling smile on their wedding day. The moment she said, "It sounds like pain learning how to breathe." Somewhere between the silence and the storm, he realized he had fallen in love with the woman he had promised not to love. He whispered to himself, "What have I done?" And the answer came back in the echo of the rain. Too late, too real, and entirely his fault. 2 weeks passed. Ethan Vale worked in silence, though the world around him roared. Investors demanded answers. Journalists camped outside his gates, and rumors multiplied faster than truth. Yet none of it hurt as much as the emptiness in his penthouse. The piano was untouched, her sketchbook gone, and every morning the coffee pot brewed for two even though only 1 cup was poured. Claire, his assistant, tried to reason with him. "You can release a statement, deny the gossip, move on." Ethan stared at the city skyline through his glass office. "I do not want to move on. I want to make it right." That night, he returned to the studio. The silver pen lay on his desk, the one he had given her with the words, "Make beauty out of chaos." He turned it over in his fingers. She had taken nothing but her sketches and her dignity. The rest of the world had taken her reputation. Determined, Ethan hired a private investigator. It took only days to uncover what Mia had never told him. Vanessa Reed, the former fiancée, had fabricated the hospital story and leaked the false photographs. Her motive was simple revenge and control. She wanted Ethan to fail so she could seize his shares. The discovery hit him like a storm. Every harsh word he had thrown at Mia echoed back, hollow and cruel. Without waiting another hour, Ethan drove north toward the small town where her sister's care home was located. The snow came down hard that night. He followed the address until he found a modest building lit by one flickering street lamp. Inside, the air smelled of disinfectant and faint lavender. Lena Carter sat near the window, her wheelchair surrounded by sketches of dresses taped to the wall. When Ethan approached, she looked up, surprised but calm. "She is not here," Lena said softly. "She went back to the city this morning. She was offered a job at a small boutique, said she needed to start over." Ethan hesitated. "Did she say anything else?" Lena smiled sadly. "Only that she finally stopped pretending she was not in love." He closed his eyes. The weight of what he had lost pressed on his chest. "Thank you," he whispered, leaving a thick envelope on the table, a donation for the care home signed Vale Foundation. Back in New York, the annual Vale Audio Showcase was only a day away. It was the company's most important event, and Ethan was expected to present his new project, a sound system inspired by human emotion. The irony was not lost on him. He had built machines that understood emotion better than he had understood his own heart. On the night of the event, the ballroom glittered with lights and murmurs. But when Ethan took the stage, his voice carried a different tone, steady, stripped of arrogance. Tonight's presentation is not about technology, he began. It is about learning to listen to noise, to silence, and to the people who bring both into our lives. Behind him, the screen flickered to life, displaying the title Project Silent Sound, followed by an image that silenced the crowd, a collection of sketches signed Mia Carter. The designs for the dress series she had once dreamed of creating. Whispers filled the room. Ethan continued. This project was born from the work of a woman who reminded me that imperfection is music and compassion is the purest sound. Then he stepped off the stage and turned toward the back of the room where he had seen her. Mia stood frozen near the entrance, wearing a simple black dress, her eyes wide in disbelief. She had come only to return the final paperwork for their contract, not to face the man who had broken her heart. Ethan walked up to her, ignoring the cameras, ignoring the hundreds of people watching. You once told me that beauty lives in things that do not fit, he said softly. Then you left, and I realized I was one of them. Mia swallowed hard, her voice trembling. Why are you saying this here? Because I never gave you the apology you deserved, he answered. And because I want the world to know the truth. You fixed more than a company, Mia. You fixed me. The audience fell silent. Some captured the moment on their phones. Others simply watched as two strangers who had married for convenience finally faced what they had become. Mia's eyes shimmered, torn between anger and the ache of recognition. It is too late, Ethan. Our contract ends tonight. He nodded. Then let me start a new one. No signatures. Just honesty. The applause began slowly, then spread through the hall, not for the speech, but for the feeling behind it. Mia turned away, her heart racing. She left before he could say another word. Ethan did not follow. He only whispered to himself, if destiny wants another chance, it will find a way. And as he looked at the sketches glowing on the screen behind him, he knew that this story was far from over. The night after the showcase felt endless. The city lights flickered against the rain, and Ethan Vale sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the reflection of himself on the glass wall. The applause from the event still echoed faintly in his mind, but it was hollow without her beside him. The world now saw him as a redeemed man, a visionary who honored a woman's work, yet the one person who had inspired that redemption was gone. Across town, Mia Carter packed the last box from her small rented room above a boutique. The owner had offered her a junior designer position, impressed by her sketches that appeared in the Vale presentation. But she could not enjoy the success. Every compliment felt like a bruise that reminded her of Ethan, his voice, his contradictions, his quiet regrets. Her phone buzzed with unread messages, but she ignored them all. She told herself she was moving forward, but the silence between them had its own gravity. Days turned into weeks. The tabloids lost interest, the rumors faded, and Vale Audio's stock climbed higher than ever. Yet Ethan withdrew from the spotlight. He refused interviews, skipped meetings, and spent his nights in the sound lab, building something new, something only he could hear. One late evening, Claire entered the lab and found him surrounded by wires and half-assembled speakers. You cannot keep hiding here, she said gently. Ethan did not look up. I am not hiding. I am listening. Listening to what? He paused. To what I lost. Meanwhile, Mia's career quietly began to grow. Her silent sound collection caught the attention of local fashion magazines. Every design carried the rhythm of her journey, grace stitched with sorrow, beauty shaped from brokenness. One morning, a letter arrived without a sender's name. Inside was a simple note. The world heard you because you never stopped creating. E. She held the note for a long time before setting it aside. She thought she was over him, but that small line pulled every memory back. A month later, she received an invitation to a charity gala hosted by the Vale Foundation. She almost declined, but the event supported spinal rehabilitation programs, the very cause that had helped her sister. Something inside her whispered that she should go, not for him, but for closure. The evening shimmered with gold lights and soft jazz. As she entered the ballroom, people turned and whispered, not with gossip this time, but with admiration. Ethan was on stage, presenting a new project. This, he said, gesturing toward the screen, is more than sound technology. It is empathy turned into frequency. It is a design that listens. Behind him, a video began playing footage of children and patients in therapy, their movements syncing with sound waves that adapted to their rhythm. The project name appeared. Harmony dedicated to Mia and Lena Carter. Mia froze. Around her, the audience rose in applause. Ethan looked up from the stage, his gaze finding hers instantly. His voice lowered. Some people teach you that love is not noise, it is resonance. You do not hear it, you feel it. And when you lose it, The silence never sounds the same. When the event ended, she tried to slip away quietly, but he was waiting near the exit. The noise of the crowd faded behind them. "You came," he said softly. "I came for my sister's cause," she replied. He smiled faintly. "Then let me thank you for giving it purpose." They stood under the soft glow of the chandelier. Neither moved, neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Ethan said, "I cannot change the past, but I can give the future a better sound, if you let me." Mia looked up at him, her eyes steady. "You are not offering a contract this time?" "No," he said quietly. "Only a promise." She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out the silver pen, the one engraved "Make beauty out of chaos." She placed it in his hand. "Then start by keeping this. You taught me that even chaos has music." As the orchestra began playing in the distance, their reflections blurred into one on the marble floor. And for the first time, they were no longer strangers bound by paper, but two souls finally finding harmony in the same song. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows of the Vale Foundation office. For the first time in months, Ethan Vale arrived early. His usual air of distance had softened. The tension that once lived in his shoulders seemed to have melted away. He was not the same man who had hired a stranger to pose as his wife. He spent the day reviewing the success of the Harmony Project. Hospitals had begun requesting the technology, and therapy centers reported improvements in patient recovery. Yet despite all the praise, Ethan could not stop thinking about the night before the chandelier light on Mia's face, the pen in his hand, her words echoing, "Even chaos has music." That evening, he drove to the small community center where Mia had started teaching design to local students. The building was humble but full of color, fabric draped across walls, laughter echoing through open doors. She stood at the front of the room, demonstrating how to hand-stitch a pattern. When she saw him in the doorway, surprise flickered across her face, followed by something gentler. "Are you lost, Mr. Vale?" she teased, the hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "Completely," he admitted, "and I think you are the only person who knows the way." The students giggled, and Mia rolled her eyes, shooing them off for the day. When the room finally emptied, silence filled the space, comfortable, familiar. Ethan set the silver pen on her table. "I came to return this," he said. She looked at him. "You already did last night." He shook his head. "No, last night you gave it back out of kindness. Today I'm giving it back out of gratitude." Mia brushed a thread from her hand. "So, what happens now?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Now, we try again. Not as strangers, not as actors in a story we did not write, but as two people who finally know what they are fighting for." Her expression softened, but she did not answer right away. "I am not the girl you married in that contract, Ethan. I am not trying to be saved anymore." "I know," he said. "That is why I am here. Because I want to walk beside you, not in front of you." The air between them shifted, filled with something unspoken and steady. Then a small voice came from the door, Lena, smiling from her wheelchair. "Are you two going to keep talking, or is someone going to invite me to dinner?" They both laughed, the sound breaking whatever distance was left. Ethan bent down to greet her. "Dinner it is. My treat, and I promise not to talk about contracts or business." Later that night, they sat at a quiet restaurant overlooking the river. The air was cool, the city lights reflecting on the water like scattered diamonds. Ethan listened as Mia told stories about her students and her designs. For the first time, there was no performance, no camera flashes, only the rhythm of conversation that felt like music. At the end of the meal, Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. He placed it on the table, but when she opened it, there was no ring, only a folded paper. Inside were two words written in his handwriting. No deadlines. Mia's eyes shimmered. "You are a strange man, Ethan Vale." He smiled. "That makes two of us." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I am not asking for promises. I am asking for time. Whatever we build next, I want it to be real." She looked down at their hands, then back at him. "Time is a good start." The river wind brushed past them, carrying the soft hum of the city. For once, Ethan did not hear noise or silence, only balance. Two hearts finding the same frequency after all the static. And as they walked together along the waterfront, the faint sound of laughter followed them, proof that even after all the mistakes, destiny had simply been waiting for the right moment to play its final note. A few months later, spring returned to New York City. The days were warmer, softer, filled with the kind of light that made even concrete look alive. Mia Carter's Community Design Center had grown into a small movement, students creating fashion from recycled fabric, using art to raise funds for medical research. Every news outlet wanted to interview her, but she politely declined them all. She did not want fame. She wanted peace, progress, and purpose. Ethan Vale, meanwhile, had quietly stepped back from the corporate spotlight. He still owned Vale Audio, but most of his time was spent working on the Harmony Foundation building programs that combined music therapy and rehabilitation. To the world, it looked like he had finally found balance. To him, it felt like he had finally found home. One Saturday morning, Ethan stopped by Mia's studio carrying a box of new fabric rolls and an amused smile. "Your suppliers told me you are impossible to keep up with," he said. "So, I brought backup." Mia laughed. "You know, for someone who claims to be retired from business, you are still very good at managing things." "I learned from the best," he said. They spent the morning arranging materials and talking about ideas for an upcoming charity auction. When Mia mentioned she wanted to design a dress inspired by sound waves, a dress that moves like music, Ethan looked thoughtful. "Then let me build the sound to match it," he said. "You design the visual, I will create the echo." As the day went on, the space filled with rhythm, the soft snip of scissors, the hum of machines, and Ethan's occasional laughter whenever she scolded him for folding fabric wrong. It was ordinary. Yet it felt like everything they had both been missing. But life, as always, found its way to test them. That evening, as they packed up, a man in a suit approached the door. It was a representative from the Vale Audio Board. "Mr. Vale," he said sharply, "the company is under review. There are accusations that you redirected funds from corporate accounts to the Harmony Foundation." Ethan froze, disbelief tightening his jaw. "That is absurd." The man handed him an envelope. "The audit begins Monday. The press already knows." When he left, Mia turned to him. "Is it true?" He met her eyes, steady but pained. "I used my own dividends, nothing illegal, but they will twist it." The next few days became a storm. Newspapers ran headlines like "Philanthropy or Fraud" and "Billionaire under fire for secret transfers." Cameras followed Ethan everywhere. Investors panicked. Through it all, Mia stayed silent, but her actions spoke. She stood by him at every interview, at every meeting. When a reporter shouted, "Are you protecting him because he saved you?" she answered calmly, "No, I am standing here because he taught me what integrity sounds like." The board investigation concluded a week later. All funds were traced, every document cleared, Ethan's name was restored. But what mattered most to him was not the vindication, it was that she had never once doubted him. After the storm passed, Ethan found her at the studio balcony, watching the sunset turn the city gold. He walked up beside her. "You did not have to defend me," he said quietly. Mia smiled. "You once told me that love is resonance, not noise. I just decided to echo back." He laughed softly, relief and affection blending in his voice. "Then I hope it never fades." "It will not," she said. "Not if we keep choosing to listen." As the light faded, the city around them pulsed with the steady rhythm of life. They had started as strangers, met through a contract, and survived scandal after scandal. But now, in the hush between chaos and calm, they finally understood the same truth: real love is not found in perfection. It is built in the noise, tested in silence, and kept alive when two hearts refused to give up the sound they found in each other. Summer arrived quietly, bringing a calm rhythm to their lives that neither of them had known before. Ethan Vale had learned to slow down, to let mornings begin without phone calls or meetings. He spent more time at Mia's studio than in his own office, helping her students experiment with sound-inspired textiles. The walls were covered with sketches and fragments of lyrics, proof that their worlds had begun to merge, fabric and frequency, color and tone. One evening, while Mia was adjusting a mannequin, Ethan entered carrying a folded newspaper. "Look," he said, pointing to the headline, "Harmony wins International Humanitarian Award." Her eyes widened as she read the article. "They are recognizing your project, Ethan. You deserve this." He shook his head. "No, we deserve this. The award is for people who turn compassion into action, and that is what you do every day." A week later, they attended the award ceremony together. The ballroom shimmered with gold light, reminiscent of the night they had first met. But this time there were no cameras chasing scandal, no scripted smiles. When Ethan went on stage to accept the award, he paused before speaking. "Months ago," he said, "I built machines to make sound perfect. I believed silence was strength. But someone taught me that the heart does not speak in perfection. It speaks in courage, in mistakes, and in second chances." He looked down from the stage, finding Mia in the front row. Their eyes met, and he smiled. "To Mia Carter, who taught me that every beautiful thing begins with a flaw worth loving." The room filled with applause, but Mia barely heard it. Her eyes shimmered as pride and tenderness washed through her. For the first time, she felt seen not as a symbol or a savior, but as herself. After the ceremony, they stepped outside into the warm summer air. The city glowed behind them, a skyline of light and memory. Ethan held the small crystal award in his hand and turned to her. "Do you know what this reminds me of?" he asked. "The night we signed that contract. The same city, the same lights, but everything feels different now." Mia smiled. "Back then, we were pretending. Now, we are building something real." He took a slow breath, his voice quiet but certain. "You once told me chaos can become music. I think we finally found the melody." She laughed softly. "Then promise me one thing, Ethan. No more silence between us." "I promise," he said, and his voice carried the steadiness of a man who had learned the true meaning of love. Not wealth, not fame, but the courage to be honest. As the night breeze danced through her hair, she leaned her head on his shoulder. The world around them was still noisy, imperfect, alive, but for them, it had never sounded more beautiful. A year later, the rooftop of the Harmony Center glowed beneath strings of soft white lights. The summer air carried music, laughter, and the gentle hum of joy. Friends, students, and partners gathered to celebrate the center's first anniversary, but the evening held another purpose that only Ethan Vale knew. As the crowd applauded a short film about the foundation's work, Ethan stepped forward, microphone in hand. "A year ago, this building was only an idea," he began. "Today, it is a place where art, sound, and kindness live together. And it exists because one woman believed beauty could be made out of chaos." The lights dimmed slightly as a screen rose behind him, revealing a framed display, a silver pen engraved with the words, "Make beauty out of chaos." The same pen that had started everything. Ethan turned toward the audience and smiled. "Mia Carter, would you join me?" Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd as Mia stood, her dress shimmering like soft light. She walked to the stage, her eyes already glistening. Ethan faced her, voice steady but full of emotion. "We signed a contract once, pretending to be what we were not. Tonight I want to sign something different." He knelt, holding a small box. Inside, a ring rested beside a folded piece of paper. No conditions, no deadline, just a promise to keep building this life together. Tears filled her eyes as the audience grew silent. "Ethan," she whispered, "we started as strangers." He smiled. "And destiny made you my forever." Applause erupted around them as she nodded through her tears and took his hand. The city lights flickered like 1,000 stars below, and for a moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. Their story had begun with a contract but ended with a choice love built not on perfection, but on understanding, forgiveness, and the courage to start again. And as the night wind carried their laughter across the rooftop, New York City seemed to hum along, the melody of two hearts finally in harmony.